everyone. Welcome to Royally Unfiltered, the show that takes you behind palace gates like never before. This is where tradition meets truth and nothing is off limits. This week, helping us tackle all the biggest headlines is royal commentator Duncan Larcombe and Vanity Fair royal correspondent Katie Nicholl. Katie, I know that you are a very fashionable female.
Mm.
So we're always kind of taking a look at who's showing up at Fashion Week, what is standing out style wise. Were you surprised at all to see Meghan Markle in Paris?
Well, I was surprised to see her with her feet up in the back of her car because I just think that is just such bad etiquette, full stop. Was I surprised to see her at Paris Fashion Week? Yes and no. And I think, don't forget the Queen sat in the front row of a fashion catwalk show with Anna Wintour. So, don't forget that. But I think, we are seeing Meghan doing different things. One of her friends, I think, is creative director at Balenciaga, and that's officially why she was there, according to her people, to go and support that friend. Fair enough. She loves fashion. She is incredibly stylish. I think it's very much about getting her out there, as sort of brand Meghan and very much sort of severing those ties with the royal family. And I think sort of feeding into that whole sense of her feeling more like a celebrity, an A-list celebrity, as she would like it to be, than necessarily a royal as such. So we're seeing them doing more glitzy, glamorous things, turning up at awards shows. They're on their way to New York right now, aren't they, to go to an awards show? So not entirely surprised. And she did create something of a splash.
Oh man, imagining the queen with her feet up on the seat in front of
It
her now too.
wouldn't,
No, no, no,
it
no,
wouldn't
kid.
have happened.
Duncan, talk to me about your reaction to Meghan, specifically some of the negative headlines that circulated in the States. I can tell you, page 6, the owned by the New York Post, was the idea of the video that's taken a stone's throw away from the death site of Princess
Yeah.
Diana. Do you think it was intentional?
Well, as I think Katie alluded to, I think it's just proof that Meghan lives in her own world, her own bubble. I mean, how insensitive. Your husband's mother died in a car crash driving along the same river in the Seine, by the side of the same river, and you're posting for your followers. I mean, it beggars belief, to be honest. When I saw that, I just thought, what on earth is Meghan doing? But it just shows she's ploughing her own path, and to hell with Harry.
Ooh. Oh, well, there's the quote of the day. Sorry, Katie, you've got some catching up to do. That was pretty aggressive. All right, well, let's talk about Harry, because the African Parks charity has had some difficulty over the last few years. It is associated with Prince Harry. It's been embroiled in a significant scandal involving human rights abuses committed by its parks rangers against indigenous Baka communities in the Republic of Congo. I won't go into the abuses because I don't want to get flagged on YouTube, but it's SA, torture, things like that they're being accused of. And they actually went to Tony Blair's wife's law firm, Sherry Blair, Omnia Strategy, and they asked for an independent investigation. And Omnia Strategy acknowledged that there were multiple abuses that had taken place, but they would not release a full finding of the report at the request of African Parks. So we don't know exactly what is confirmed, what they could not confirm. This week, Chad's environment minister gave a 4-page statement announcing the end of the country's 15-year partnership with African Parks. He accused the charity of a disrespectful attitude towards the government. He also said that there'd been a resurgence in poaching and a lack of investment at the reserve managed by the conservation group. Katie, you just said it yourself. Harry's on his way to collect a Humanitarian of the Year award in New York regarding mental health, but he's lost Senebale this year. African Parks is potentially crumbling. I'm being dramatic, but African Parks is
Well,
clearly not.
it's certainly embroiled in a controversy, isn't it? And now, as you were saying, Kinsey, I mean, they have acknowledged that some of their rangers have been found guilty of committing some of these serious crimes. There hasn't been any publication of an internal investigation, and yet Harry remains, I think, on the board of that charity. I think he joined the board in 2023. He was at a big event with them in 2024. He hasn't announced he's stepping down. I mean, I think, you know, Duncan and I were both in Africa together. I think it was back in 2010, Duncan, when we were out there seeing Harry's work with Centre Bali. And I mean, I was truly shocked. I think we all were when he stood down from that charity amidst, you know, all the rows with the chair and allegations of bullying. And it felt so sad for Harry to have to step down from a charity that has, it's no exaggeration to say, saved a country and was going to be one of his legacy pieces of work. And I think he will be very concerned by what he's hearing about African parks. I think, you know, Meghan might want to be tone deaf in certain things, and, you know, driving past that site in Paris might be an example of being tone deaf, but I don't think they can afford to be tone deaf when it comes to their charity work, because this is really, really important. And as you say, going off to collect this humanitarian award, well, that's fantastic, but, you know, the timing couldn't be more uncomfortable. And there are obviously some big questions to be asked. And I suppose the first one is, what does Harry know? And is he going to continue to sit on the board of African Parks? He's been there since 2017. You know, without a doubt, this charity's done some amazing work. But, you know, for Chad to cut ties, they say because of a resurgence of poaching, there are claims of financial misconduct. You know, these are really serious allegations and things that Harry can't afford to be tone deaf. And I'm sure he won't be. I think, you know, the traction for Harry seems to be going in a forward progressive way. He's not going to want something like this to unsettle that work, I would have thought.
Well, Duncan, Katie mentions the importance of Prince Harry speaking out or acknowledging it. He has kept his head down throughout this investigation. And there was an event in New York with African Parks Charity where the media was shut out. They did not allow any media in. Do you think he will speak out against this, or do you think it's like one of the convenient never complain, never explain moments where Harry and Meghan actually embrace that strategy?
Well, look, Harry loves Africa. You know, he fell in love with Africa when he was a young boy, and he has tried his hardest to attach himself to decent charities or even set up his own charities to try and make a difference. As Katie said, in Lesotho, the work that Centre Bali did was a game changer for the country. This is a body blow for Prince Harry. I don't think there's any question about that. And it shows the difficulty that royals have when they attach themselves to charities. And then it turns out that perhaps, allegedly, the charities aren't quite on the ground as watertight, perhaps, as they might be. So I think this will really, really worry Harry, and I you know, and frustrate him and make him angry. And it's yet another African charity, frankly, that's being ticked off the list, which isn't great for a prince that says he loves Africa.
Katie, I'm sorry to like fixate on this specific topic, but when you think about the problems that have happened with African parks, do you ever connect the dots that like this is why the palace is so important, or the men in gray suits, because they usually do the due diligence, or somebody rushes in and says, before this gets any worse, like you either fix it or we're pulling our royal from representing you. Is that kind of where the palace is beneficial to these personalities, that they have fixers that try to swoop in and clean stuff up before it can explode in a big exclusive in the Daily Mail?
Well, I mean, yes, you know, to a degree. To a degree, that is the case, but not always. And the king, when he was Prince of Wales, found himself embroiled in quite a few questionable charity affiliations. There were issues over access to the then Prince of Wales in return for charitable donations. You know, I think, as Duncan says, it's a difficult, and it can be quite a murky relationship sometimes, that idea of a royal affiliation with a charity. Now, when it's genuine and it's bona fide and it's authentic, it's brilliant and it works phenomenally well. When there's discord and fracture and fallouts, as you saw with Centre Bali, it had a really sorry ending for Prince Harry. I think Prince Harry's got really good people around him. He's got a good team around him, and I think they will be looking at this. As I say, I don't think it's a case of them ignoring this or having that, never complain, never explain. We're not going to explore this strategy. I don't think that will apply to this. I think Harry will want his people to be all over it. And of course, African Parks isn't just in Chad, it's in 12 other countries. Now, if other countries start dropping or cutting their ties with the charity, then I think it's going to that. Then you've got a more serious issue. So possibly it's just a case of let's wait and see. I think he'll be wanting answers to questions. I think probably at the moment his focus is going and getting that humanitarian award, but this is something that will be being looked at, and he will not be ignoring it, because I think it could be potentially very damaging to him.
Hi, all. Kinsey here. I want to share today's brilliant sponsor with you and tell you why I love Peak. Peak has taken a modern science-based approach to wellness, creating tea crystals and superfood blends made with exceptionally clean ingredients. Their products are all about making daily health habits easier and more effective for us, whether that's supporting digestion, glowing skin, steady energy, or just feeling your best. Personally, hydration was always a struggle for me. I drank plenty of water, experimented with electrolytes, and even stuck to the right skincare routine. Yet, I still dealt with dry skin, brain fog, and restless nights. That shifted when I started Peak's Deep Hydration Protocol. In the morning, I use BT Fountain, their beauty electrolyte. It helps hydrate from within, smooth skin, and gives me lasting energy. In the evening, I switch to RE Fountain, the calming electrolyte, which contains a gentle form of magnesium that eases tension and helps me get deep, restful sleep without feeling groggy the next day. What sets it apart for me is its purity, no sugar, no fillers, no artificial flavors, just real ingredients like lemon juice and beetroot. Within a week, I noticed my skin looking more plump and hydrated, my focus sharper, and my overall energy had improved. If you want to give it a try, I've got a special link in the show notes for you, 20% off for life, plus a free gift with my link, peaklife.com/Kinsey. That's PIQUE life.com/Kinsey. Now back to the show. All right, Duncan, Katie mentioned it. Prince Harry, Meghan Markle will be honored with Project Healthy Minds Humanitarians of the Year Award at the organization's World Mental Health Day Gala this Thursday. This is happening in New York City. They're also going to participate in Project Healthy Minds World Mental Health Day Festival on Friday, October 10th. Do you think that they're going to get as much pushback for this Humanitarian of the Year award as Prince Harry got for the Pat Tillman Award last year? You saw people signing, petitions saying that they're not worthy. Or do you think that this might fly under the radar a little bit based on bigger issues when it comes to headlines in the news?
Well, I mean, they get an award. Great. It's good publicity for the organizations they support and the work that they do. I'm sure they'll really revel in it. But it just goes to show that, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, Kinsey, sorry. But,
that's why we have you on, Duncan.
But you kind of wonder whether these award judges and the people that organize them are just inviting people that are going to make the whole profile of their awards evening and their ceremony go higher. And I'm a bit of a cynic on that. And that's not Harry and Meghan's fault, but I'm a bit cynical because I just struggle, frankly, when I see stuff like this. And I just think, well, they've invited them because they're box office. Have they invited them because they are really genuinely worthy of the award?
Katie, you covered Hollywood for a long time too. That's kind of the name of the game, right? You want the big star, you invite the big stars because the big stars, or at least somebody that has name recognition, will also get attention for your brand or your company. And it seems like a classic strategy, right?
Of course, and if you're going to host a gala dinner in New York and it's going to be a little bit of stardust sprinkled on it, of course, you're going to need some A-list names there. But I do think it does something of a disservice to suggest it's only them there for their names, because of course they've supported this project over the years. And
But for 2 years, right? 2 years, and
yeah,
you're already
they
getting a Humanitarian of the Year award, and you've been there for
well,
2 years.
they've been there for 2 years. They've been affiliated with it. They've done their work in terms of supporting young people, particularly in that arena of social media and online, spans longer than 2 years, and I'm sure that that's what's being looked at as well. But listen, if they'd only been shortlisted, would they be getting on a plane and going over to New York? I doubt it. They know that they're going to be getting this award, and of course that's it. That's an incentive to go. And certainly having the presence of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is going to put, well, I'd never heard of this award before. It's putting it on an international platform. Is that such a bad thing? They do good work, and it's something very much that Harry and Meghan are affiliated with. No, I don't think it is such a bad thing. I mean, I think, Kinsey, you and I have had this discussion quite a few times, in terms of Harry and Meghan's philanthropy, and really, this is when I think they should be celebrated as a couple, because I think their philanthropic work is fantastic. And they do a lot of good when it comes to that. I think people are far more interested in that than hearing them having a go at the royal family. So I'm not going to knock them too much for this. I think the award is probably deserved. Yes, it's certainly going to get more headlines than if they weren't going, but they have done some really good work in this sector, I think.
Well, I mean, they have been working with this charity longer than Meghan Markle managed to work as a working member of the British royal
I was
family.
going to
So,
say
Katie,
it's longer than her time within the royal
yeah,
family, so
so
that's saying
Katie, I will give
something.
you that. Absolutely. Hey, do you mind if I stay on you, Katie, here for a second? Because you wrote a really interesting piece in Vanity Fair. If you're watching at home and want to check it out, the title is Prince Harry Has to Pass the Trust Test to Mend His
Mm.
Relationship with King Charles. Can you talk to us a little bit about that piece? And you even got the inside scoop on what could potentially be going down this holiday season.
Yes, well, I'm always digging around to find out what's going on festive planning, because of course that's all planned very, very early on. It's only ha October. We're all thinking about Halloween, right? But of course the royals are thinking about Christmas and who's going to be there. And by all accounts, an invitation is not going to be extended to Harry. That said, his father's very open to the idea of doing something in the new year when Charles and Camilla are up in Scotland, and possibly there will be another meeting. Certainly Harry said that's what he wants. Um, I would say that Harry has stayed mostly quiet about that meeting. We haven't had any real details leaked out about what was said, but what I was told, from a source very close to the king, was that this is an exercise in trust, and that the king has always left the door open. This has been an opening where they've had a face-to-face meeting that was significantly longer than the last time they met, when Harry came over when Charles was just diagnosed with cancer, and by all accounts went well. Now, what was interesting was that there was a real narrative being played out in the media over here, with certain newspapers saying that the meeting had been terribly formal in tone, suggesting that the king didn't feel it had gone as well as perhaps Harry might have wanted it to do. Harry then combating that with suggestions that the palace men in grey were trying to sabotage the whole thing. So you had a whole subplot going on here. But I'm told the meeting did go well, and that Charles remains very much open to another meeting. But it really does depend on those private meetings staying private. And the contact said to me that the ball was very much in Harry's court. It's down to him to prove to his father that he can be trusted. And I think, on a personal level, the king wants to have a relationship with his youngest son, and he wants to be able to get to know his grandchildren, because he's met Archie and Lilibet on a handful of times.
Absolutely. Now, Duncan, you know, Katie has this great scoop talking about this trust test. In this piece, she also says, when it comes to Prince William, maybe not as willing for a meeting with Prince Harry. How devastating is this for you to watch that play out? And I don't feel like I'm being dramatic here. I mean, you grew up with these guys, you watched the evolution, you watched them become men. Is it pretty defeating to see these two that were so incredibly close, not speaking to each other, and it not feeling like you're inching we're inching anywhere near any sort of reconciliation?
Well, if you think of your own families, it's absolutely awful when siblings fall. It's really unpleasant when a parent and a child fall out. Not child, but offspring fall out. That it doesn't get much worse than that, because you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends and all that. But I think Katie's absolutely spot on. I mean, Charles wants this to work, and it is a slight test. They're baby steps. He only met Harry for 50 minutes or so we're told. That's not long. It's not like Harry came and stayed for a few days and they chewed the fat over a glass of nice Scottish whiskey. That wasn't the case. With William, well, it's going to take more, because there's damage there. William has had to suffer the fact that Harry has directly criticised and made accusations towards his wife. And as we've seen, William, above all, is protective of his family. That's sort of number one for William. So I think, with Harry, it's got 50 minutes with Prince William to say sorry or not. Does Harry even feel sorry? I'm not sure that he does. But it's going to take a long, long time, and it's going to take a lot more meetings between King Charles and Harry before there's any chance of Harry burying the hatchet, if you like, with his brother. And yeah, to answer your question, I find it terribly sad. Those two were thick as thieves. I used to really enjoy the fact that they'd bounce off each other, and if they did a joint engagement, it was fun. They actually took the mickey out of each other. They put each other down, but in a nice way, in an endearing way. I remember watching them play football in South Africa, and Harry was taking the mickey out of his brother for not being very good. Well, his brother had just been made the head of the FA, the Football Association. It's fun, but it just makes it more sad, I think, now that we're in this situation with the brothers.
Katie, you also write in Vanity Fair, you're recapping that super sweet Eugene Levy interview on The Reluctant Traveler. Prince William does bring up Prince Harry. It's a very subtle mention, but he also talks about 2024 being the hardest year of his life. As someone that has covered the royals as long as you have, are you at all taken aback by that, thinking about the death of Princess Diana, too, that 2024 would be the hardest year of his life, having witnessed him walking behind that coffin and knowing that he experienced something so horrible as a teenager?
Well, I mean, look, he's hinted at how awful that year has been. I mean, he described it when he was recently in South Africa to reporters there as a brutal year. I mean, I watched that interview and I was really moved by it. I thought this was William, at his most candid, at his most open, making himself very vulnerable, actually, but in doing so, really connecting with people. And I think, if anyone sort of had any questions about what sort of a king he's going to be one day, they are quite succinctly answered when you've watched that interview. This is a man who has empathy and compassion, who is a family man above all, but also understands what duty involves for him. And I was fascinated by so much of what he said in terms of how he's raising his young children away from screens in the great outdoors with plenty of sport, how hands-on they are as parents. I mean, things that I've known and have reported on over the years, but it's another thing to hear it directly from him. But also, Kinsey, what I found so fascinating about that interview was him talking about the future and, talking about that prospect of him being king one day and George being king one day. A question that Eugene asked him, which was a big, bold question to ask William. I thought, Eugene did a brilliant job at that interview. And he got great answers out of William, and that idea of change being so important to the royal family, not radical change, but change. And I think, when you consider it's been such an awful year, a year where his father has gotten sick, his wife has gotten sick, I mean, that man has faced so much uncertainty. It doesn't matter who he is. He's a human who's faced, real pain and trauma for a second time in his life. I think to have the incredible sense of perspective and optimism that he has really makes him stand out. And I think he came across absolutely brilliantly. And as I said, I was really quite moved by it, and I think many people were.
Yeah, he does. He focuses on the positive, which is really refreshing
Absolutely.
to see. Katie, you have kids. Is it
Yes.
going to be sustainable? Because I love the idea of no screens. I love the idea of no screens. But then I'm like, are they going to feel left out that they don't?
Well, they get iPads and things at school, obviously, because it's part of the learning curriculum. But I think, when it comes to, having their own smartphones and social media and everything, it's not just Harry and Meghan who are campaigning for safer online measures for children. William and Kate are very active in that. And I think they kind of have to lead by example, and they've made that decision that screens are not going to be a big part of their children's lives. Is it possible to do that? Yes, I'm very strict with my children and their screen time. I mean, I am, and I think there's a lot to be said for that, and so much to be said for enjoying sport and being outdoors and having that family time together, because that's priceless.
Absolutely. You're right. I mean, they do have plenty of land. Like there's plenty to do on the property. I can't remember what then whatever was falling from the tree that Prince Louis was collecting and they were fighting hidden around the house. So yes, you're right. They have plenty of things to do. I'm over here in California where we're all like stacked on top of each other. Duncan, did you see that interview and what was your reaction? Prince William has really grown into this very confident and assertive young man.
I thought it was a good interview, and it showed the side of William um, that we can all relate to. He is a father first and a future king second. I think he's going to be a really good king because I think he's really putting thought into and planning into. I mean, years ago, we I remember with William, way back in 2005, when we'd just been to a war memorial and we had a drink with William and a couple others in the press pack, and said, why do you want to join the military? As he did, he had his stint in the military. He said, it's because I'm going to be meeting veterans my whole life, and I want to be able to look them in the eye and have some kind of credibility. So the amount of planning and forethought that William's putting into his life to approach his destiny, I think is to his credit, actually. And the fact that he doesn't put that above his family is even better. Like Katie says, the worst year of his life. Well, what about the year your mother died? He cares about the people around him. He cares about his father. He cares about his wife, and he cares about his kids. And that can only surely be a good thing.
Katie, I'm sorry to throw this question at you, and this is our last question, but I don't feel like Duncan's going to vibe with it, although it's off what Duncan said.
Yes.
I just watched an interview with Taylor Swift, and she's reacting to all the negativity around her new album. And I loved something she said because I wasn't the biggest fan of the new album. It's okay. But I love this thing she said. She's like, everything I do is about legacy. I'm very thoughtful that everything I do, there's a bigger picture, there's a bigger objective. And as I watched that, I thought of Prince William because I felt like this Eugene Levy interview was something, was about legacy. He's planting these little seeds and we're going to reference it 20 years from now. And none of us have any idea where we're just rotting on our couches watching The Reluctant Traveler, that he's implanting these ideas in our heads. Do you get that sense? And Duncan just said it, like Prince William really is so thoughtful when it comes to the overall legacy. And don't be mad at me for asking this question, but do you get the sense sometimes that Harry and Meghan are about the right now instead of about the legacy that we see Prince William fixating on?
Well, I completely agree with Duncan that William is so much about the long-term vision and the future. And you use that word legacy. And actually, it's funny you mentioned Taylor Swift because for some reason, on my way to this interview, I was thinking about Taylor Swift and William and Bon Jovi singing at Kensington Palace at a charity gala dinner that I was at. I'm thinking, gosh, there are some things I never thought I'd see in my life, and that was definitely one of them. And William is a big Taylor fan, and I'm sure, whatever Prince George listens to his music on, even if it's not an iPhone. There's some Spotify account or something somewhere in that house belting out not just AC/DC, because we know they like that, but Taylor too. But I think, when it comes to legacy, that that is what William is about. And he believes in the monarchy. He believes in its future. He believes it has a future. He does not want it fading out when his reign comes to an end. He wants to future-proof it, and that is what it's all about. And I think to have seen him let his guard down the way he did, to have some understanding of what that bigger picture looks like, I think sort of makes everyone a little bit curious to see what's going to come next, and not just curious, but also quite assured that actually the monarchy is in really, really safe hands.
Okay. Katie was nice and ditched my final question, Duncan. So I'm going to toss it back to you. Do Harry and Meghan think about legacy as much as Prince William does, or do you think they're all about the right now?
Oh, thank you, Kinsey. That's so kind of you. Do you know what? When you said that, I thought, my goodness me, she's right. I mean, that is it. What is Meghan and Harry's plan? What are they trying to actually do? And where are they going to be in 5 years? Where are they going to be in 10 years? It does seem very instant gratification, but that's being really critical of them. And I
You
think
would never. You would never be that critical of them.
No, look, I like Prince Harry, okay? I lay my cards on the table. I think he's a great guy. I can't say the same about Meghan, but that's only because of what we see and hear. But I think William, like Katie's outlined, this desire for progression, the monarchy having a safe future. I think William gets that from the memory of his grandmother, with the Queen. I think he's been heavily influenced by her, whereas Harry's a bit more of a rebel, doesn't see the merit in having a royal family and wishes he wasn't part of it, but at the same time will then go and take award ceremonies in New York, so it's a very confused message from Harry and Meghan. And yeah, I'll answer it straight. I don't think they have a long-term plan whatsoever.
Katie,
I
did you
think
have?
also just to close on Duncan's point about whether or not they have a long-term plan, I think in many ways it almost works to the royal family's advantage that Harry and Meghan have set up this rival court in Montecito, that it is not focusing on legacy and long-term future in the same way that is the role of the royals, because otherwise then you do have potential conflict and that could cause real problems. So in many ways, and I agree with Duncan too, in terms of how sad that rift makes me. It doesn't give me any pleasure to see these two brothers fall out. Actually, that division between them in terms of that polarizing in terms of what they're doing is actually not such a bad thing when you think about it for the royal family.
Ooh, Katie, what a great point to end on. All right, agree with us, disagree with us. Let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Duncan, Larcombe, thank you so much for thanks for taking the tough questions. I know you don't like it all the time, so thank you. And Katie, Vanity Fair, I read you religiously. Thank you so much for all of your insight and your great and sharing your great scoops with us. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.